wakhe. So singcwaba just before sunrise. Ngesikhathi ekuthiwa umsobomvu. Siyangcwaba siyaqeda. Mama, women were not supposed to be standing on top of the graveyard because they carry a womb which gives life. The grave is a womb. The womb is a womb. Now the grave is a womb that gives birth to a new reality, eternal life. The womb, physical womb of a woman, is a womb that gives birth to temporal life. So you cannot disturb life with death. So mama bebemela emuva kungene obaba bathwana bari diphiri, the jackals who follow the order of Anubis in the Egyptian mythologies. Diphiri. These men would go in and take care of the funeral ceremony. And the people who are going to physically touch the grave are young men who are unmarried. Because the old men have to go back home and take care of their homes. So they cannot take back ukufa emakhaya. Now, things are happening differently. No baba bazele, basethuneni bathela umhlaba. And then when they go back, confusion happens emakhaya. Because the funeral ceremony now is all mixed up. Okwesibili, isintu. Umuntu bekangangcwatshwa elele ebheke phezulu. Uthela umhlaba phezu kwakhe. We used to bury in a fetal position. How you came into the world is how you are going to go out of the world. The grave was never a square, but a circle. Because now it is a womb. And kule circle le, umuntu wenzelwa ikamera. You are built a room so that in that room you are put with all your artifacts. Njengoba nimbona ubaba ahleli besizombeka nesikhwama sakhe ngoba siyamazi ukuthi lesikhwama lesi besiphatha into zakhe uyasithanda. So la yakhona uzosidinga. Sibeke isikhwama sakhe simbekele ukhamba lakhe lomqombothi ngoba wayezithandela ukuphuza. Sibeka no mabele la ukuthi ahambe ayosilimela phambili. Now those things are put in a specific room.
Of using the Bible as a final judge of all things African.
All things African.
Of African culture, of African thing. If you say Mudimu, then people want to see a comparison of it in the Bible. Now, coming to what you were saying earlier in terms of language. You see with the language they use what they call comparative linguistic dynamics. Mm-hmm. So what we have in our language, they compare it with what they have in their language. Mm-hmm. But it does not necessarily mean the same thing.
It doesn't. Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, our languages are onomatopoeic. Mm-hmm. The Bantu languages, because but it is not only motu because it's a biped, a two-legger, a self-standing man. He's a Bantu because also he possesses two. Is a diminutive, nothing. And then I say ale odilenyana mutwa na. So it's got a little bit of two. And how we are all about it, two la. Wala the two, close the two. So because the possessor of two. Now when we say mutu, we're talking about a walking, talking being. A being that walks and talk. But also mutu is self-named. Mutu, mundu, munu, mutu. Watu is self-named, right? So it is onomatopoeic. A frog is a hua. It is because it goes like hua, hua. Or iko, because it or balobibar kitola because kiatola do. So homo because so this language name itself. Now if you are going to say twain, which means yatswana. No, yatswana. Itshwana le muntu imfene ifana nomuntu kuthiwa imfene because ifana nomuntu kithweni ubani yatshwana le muntu yabo. Now you say thweni ke baboon. Now that is not a direct translation. Baboon doesn't mean what thweni means. Yeah. So the things that we use in the other language don't necessarily mean what we English. So what is used then is a comparative linguistic dynamics. They compare what they have with what we have and then
try and make sense of it.
try and make sense of it. But because they're the ones doing the comparison, then they come up also with their own dynamics around it and define it in that way. Like Robert Moffat, when he reached among Batswana, he asked, what do you call the creator of all this? Ari Mudimu. Now he compared Mudimu of Batswana with the Mudimu of the Bible. Now Mudimu of Batswana was never born in Nazareth. Batswana bareke Mudimu wa Galuwe. So he was not born in Galilee. Now he's comparing two things that are not the same. To define his concepts, his mission, his agenda, his idea, using what is familiar with you. And that is how we got colonized too, because now the name is familiar. You say, so you're saying this Jesus ke Mudimu. So, but this Mudimu doesn't want me to follow the way of my ancestors because le badimu ke badimoni. So he stretched that, he did it deliberately. Or badimu ke badimoni. And then by eteni, by the things that we don't have, in order to demonize what we have. Now with the introduction of the new gods, they make us start questioning the old gods, our own old gods. So now that is also a trick in the language that was played in the process of our colonization. So that is why decolonization will never be complete if we don't decolonize the language, we don't decolonize the culture, we don't decolonize the ideas, the principles, and all of these things. But if we think we're just going to sugarcoat this thing, we're going to paint Jesus black and give him dreadlocks and start to say, Jesu, Nelo Mutomunzu. Listen, fake is fake. Whether it's white or black, it's still fake. You understand? So this is where our people are, that we are lazy to do what we're supposed to do in the context of decolonization.
Yes, it's very profound, because now you find that this misappropriation of concepts or misunderstanding or baboon, two different meanings, but you want to relate them to the same thing. So what happens is,
of using the Bible as a fire
infiltrated and changed our perspective and things. Like the last time I touched on a topic, and I didn't quite completely finish it, about how things are done, especially when it comes to funerals, how we missed the tradition, how we missed the plot. Now, the result of this, as we have probably noticed even in your community, is that many homes banama instability. Abantu bayagula, repeated accidents, repeated sicknesses, and it's a continuous pattern. And nobody's sitting back and looking at what is the cause of this. And the cause of this is how the deceased was taken care of. Kunalento esintwini yokuthi umuntu oshone ngengozi kumele leyo ngozi ivalwe so that ingaziphindi la ekhaya. Because what happens is a lot of other people start now to pass on ngelendlela efanayo in the same home. And there are certain rituals that were designed and performed in Africa to prevent such things. But now, ngoba we are Christianized, and in every funeral ceremony you will see, whether it's in Gauteng, Limpopo, Eastern Cape, wherever, there is going to be a Christian priest officiating that funeral. Now that means ekugcineni kuzothiwa umhlaba emhlabeni, umlotha emlotheni. Do you understand? Now, that is where we lose the plot. Ngoba umngcwabo ngokusintu basically is not perceived as it is performed today. Okokuqala umngcwabo, umuntu wayengena phansi komhlaba just before sunrise, not ilanga liphumile. We don't bury during the day because sifuna ukuthi makuphuma ilanga likhuphuke ilanga, likhuphuke nomoya wakhe. So singcwaba just before sunrise. Ngesikhathi ekuthiwa umsobomvu. Sangcwaba siyaqeda. Omama, women were not supposed to be standing on top of the graveyard because they carry a womb which gives life. In called, well, nobody calls himself. The universe aligns a name that describes a duty that is yeah. Now, I want you will get to that. I just want to dispel the concept of Mudimu is not God. Mudimu is not an object to be worshipped. I like to say God is an object of focus. If I'm sitting here focusing on this jug of water to the exclusion of everything else in the world, in this room, that is my God, because it's the object of my focus. But now, does this necessarily mean it's the creator of heaven and earth? Jesus is the object of Christians' focus. Does it make him a reality? Allah is the object of Islamic focus. Does it make it an African reality? No, it doesn't. No. As much as now we are going to talk about the gods of Kemet and assign every month of the year to a specific god of Egypt, that's not African at all. It is unscientific. I'll show you something. We talk about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, a 7-day week. Can we call these days in any African language? Umvulo. Umvulo means ukuvula, to begin, to start, to open, to initiate. Ulwesibini, numeric 2. Ulwesithathu, numeric 3. Ulwesine, numeric 4. Ulwesihlanu, numeric 5. Umgqibelo. Finish. Ukugqiba is to finish or to cover, to seal, to end. Ukugqiba, umgqibelo. Umvulo siyavula, umgqibelo siyavala. Where did amaXhosa get icawe?
Well, you see, again, coming to that, we Africans had a week of 6 days. I always ask people, what is Sunday in your language? You know? Any name you're going to use, it is borrowed. If for Sonntag, it comes from Sonntag. If for Lamurena, I describe the activity of the that day is happening there, which is non-African. Going to church is not African.
Like it's our way.
So, because that's a you understand? Because we don't have that. It is self-defining. You just define it.
Anything in between is just numbers.
Anything in between is just number to say Tuesday follow Monday. You know, so Wednesday follow Tuesday. That's just that. You understand? And then from there, if it is, and then so now these are the same thing that a foreign calendar was imposed on us. Gregorian calendar, 1582, a religious calendar. Julian calendar, 46 BC. Julius Caesar, come up with that. But we are agricultural communities. So we have a calendar that is agricultural and natural.
And it's based on natural phenomena.
Because preparela who to springtime. So this is defining what they call Indigenous Knowledge System, IKS. Now, if we are going to approach Kasiruna, Arena Lifu, the word death entered the Zulu vocabulary, the African vocabulary late. We had so bar o tlhoka fetso bana o tlhokiwa ke badimo or o tlhokilwe ke badimo. So asaliyo ka mona o ka nkane ha lebitla. It's on the other side of the grave. So and therefore the grave is what separates this side of life, which we call the living, the touchable, the mortal, the spirit going through human experience, and the grave, and the other side, which is the spirit in absence of the human experience. Because moya utsutsi nama, utsutsi kobo ya nama, ye re bitsa gore ke setopo. So ha sa gata fatshe wa bona, He's got nothing to earth the earth to earth the earth with, to connect with. Ki Mudimu, Ubadimu. That is why we never had this thing that people are going to hell, people are going to heaven. Everyone. Now it is the ritual of death that therefore make that person Mudimu or any other thing. That is why Mupata Morere hamba kahle ube idlozi elihle. You understand me? Go and be a good ancestor. Even if he was a bad ancestor, but the ritual of death are meant to transform him into a good ancestor. It's what in ancient Kemet they call the Osirification, the making of one into an Osiris.
Yes.
Because the first funerary text was about Osiris. The first burial, the first recorded death, into Osiris' death, and the rites of passage from this world to the next world, right to the weighing of his heart against the feather, and therefore make him the Lord of the dead. Basotho ba tla re ke mopedi ke moholo wa seaparalume ke motho wa pele wa o tlama leqeba, the first man to die and come back and teach us about the ways of the dead, the ways of Badimo. Ka senguni ba tla re, why are we performing the rituals of the ancestors, but we are not performing the rituals of umenzi, of unkulunkulu, which is the corruption of Kulukulwani. This Mr. Callaway, a missionary who was doing Christian missionary work among the Zulus, when he asked the Zulus, who is your first ancestor? They say it's Kulukulwani. But because he can't pronounce the word Kulukulwani, he say Unkulunkulu. So Unkulunkulu is a corruption of Kulukulwani. Now Kulukulwani is the first man. The Jews will have Adam as their first man. Basotho will have Mopedi as the first man. And so forth. But Pedir tabelela ka Khubyane. Ke morwa wa Khube. Then the Sechaba, the people will say ke batho ba Khube. Because Khube is God, ka Sepedi. Modimo ke Setswana. But when the Bible was translated, it's what they call Indigenous Knowledge System, IKS. Now, if we are going to approach it Kasiruna, Arena Lifu, the word death entered the Zulu vocabulary, the African vocabulary late. We had Aona Mutu Ushwile, Mutu Watloka Fala. So, Bar Otloka Fetsu, Ban Otloki Wakebadi, Morotloki Wakebadi. So, Asali Yogamana Okankani Halivicha is on the other side of the grave. So, and therefore, the grave is what separates this side of life, which we call the living, the touchable, the mortal, the spirit going through human experience. And the grave, and the other side, which is the spirit, in absence of the human experience. Because moya utsutsi nama, utsutsi kobo ya nama, ye re bitsa gore ke setopo. So, hasa hatafasi wa bona. It's got nothing to earth the earth to earth the earth with, to connect with. Ki Mudimu, Ubadimu. That is why we never had this thing that people are going to hell, people are going to heaven.
Oh, mama, women were not supposed to be standing on top of the graveyard because they carry a womb which gives life. The grave is a womb. The womb is a womb. Now the grave is a womb that gives birth to a new reality, eternal life. The womb, physical womb of a woman, is a womb that gives birth to temporal life. So you cannot disturb life with death. So, oh mama, bebe mela, emuva. Kungene oh baba, batwana bari diphiri, the jackals, who follow the order of Anubis in the Egyptian mythologies. Diphiri. These men would go in and take care of the funeral ceremony. And the people who are going to physically touch the grave are young men who are unmarried. Because the old men have to go back home and take care of their homes. So they cannot take back Ugufa, Emakaya. Now, things are happening differently. No baba zele, basetunini, batelumshab. And then when they go back, confusion happens, Emakaya. Because the funeral ceremony now is all mixed up. Okwesibini, isintu. Umuntu bekangangcwatshwa elele ebheke phezulu. Kuthela umhlaba phezu kwakhe. We used to bury in a fetal position. How you came into the world is how you are going to go out of the world. The grave was never a square, but a circle. Because now it is a womb.
Others might free the body, but none but ourselves can free our minds. Now, mental slavery is a serious thing. The chains were removed from us physically, they were put into the brain.
Memory, they still
in the brain. So our brains are chained. But to unchain the brain is our responsibility. This is where Rastafari is based on the ideas of a self-definition. Who feels it knows it. No one can make another one a Rasta. No one can free the other. What we're doing here, we're providing tools. Like Marxist head-to-head Lenin and Marx and Engels and Stalin and Mao Zedong, Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, to provide them with the tools to advance the cause of Marxism, Leninism, Maoism, Stalinism, so forth. Now, for us, for our people, to continue with the process of decolonization, we have to provide them the tools. Because you see, the Berlin Conference, where the Europeans sit down and colonize us,
and decide on Africa's fate.
they said for 108 days. They said for 3 months and 15 days. I don't know any conference, even
That's
the
a
biggest
long-
Pan-African conference we can have. After 7 days, our Pan-Africanists will be very bored. You hold it in Joburg, they'll be running around Maboning, trying to buy their girlfriends, knew this, knew that, and all of that. They are no more. After 3 days, they are fatigued. But those who colonize us said for 3 months, 15 days. 1884 to 1885. November to February. You understand? Why? Why did it take them 3 months,
long.
15 days to sit down to discuss our colonization? Because these people were colonizing all areas of our social
our
activities.
existence. Exactly.
All areas of our existence. They were colonizing us economically, psychologically, spiritually, and so forth. Now, it is a fallacy for us to have a problem with colonialism except Christianity, as if it was not a colonial instrument. The men who get the biggest portion of that Berlin Conference, which is the Congo, Leopold. Of Belgium. Leopold wrote a letter and instruct missionaries how they should come and use Christianity as an instrument of colonialism. He told them that when you reach there, don't teach Africans about God. They know him. You call him with many names. Nkulunkulu, Tiko, Mudimu, Ramasedi. So, what you need to do, teach them theologies about religion. Teach them that a rich man will never enter heaven. Teach them that it will take a camel to go through the eye of a needle before a rich man can enter heaven. Teach them to abandon riches on earth, to forsake riches, to forsake good life on earth, and to await for riches in heaven. And then we take them. It is there. It is recorded. It's history. It is like how to make a slave.
Exactly.
The letter of Willie Lynch. Leopold's letter addressed to the missionaries.
Revivalist
These
psychology.
people, they crafted manuals of our colonization, and they said for 3 months, 15 days. And that is why we will move from colonialism to neo-colonialism. Others might free the body, but none but ourselves can free our minds. Now, mental slavery is a serious thing. The chains were removed from us physically. They were put. Why? Why did it take them 3 months,
long.
15 days to sit down to discuss our colonization? Because these people were colonizing all areas of our social
our
activities.
existence. Exactly.
All areas of our existence. They were colonizing us economically, psychologically, spiritually, and so forth. Now, it is a fallacy for us to have a problem with colonialism except Christianity, as if it was not a colonial instrument. The men who get the biggest portion of that Berlin Conference, which is the Congo, Leopold. Of Belgium. Leopold wrote a letter and instruct missionaries how they should come and use Christianity as an instrument of colonialism. He told them that When you reach there, don't teach Africans about God. They know him. They call him with many names. Nkulunkulu, Thixo, Mudimo, Ramasedi. So, what you need to do, teach them theologies about religion. Teach them that a rich man will never enter heaven. Teach them that it will take a camel to go through the eye of a needle before a rich man can have spiritual tradition. You're going to have a lot of people who are tired of Westernism, Judeo-Christianity, who are now gravitating towards African spirituality. So we'll come up with many things. Some will be still searching for the Christian God in Africa. So even when they search, even when these things of saying, you see, Kulukuluan is the African Adam, you get to find out through the framework of anthropology that all the women all over the world, they originate from one woman. Actual Times magazine of 1994 did that. That they did placenta analysis. There was a doctor in America called Dr. Rebecca Ken. Because in singular is L, spiritual tradition. They originate from one woman. Actual Times magazine of 1994 did that. That they did placenta analysis. There was a doctor in America called Dr. Rebecca Ken. Because in singular is L. So this Elohim school of thought, which is basically made up of 12 gods, has 7 messengers, is 2. Which are called the angels.
The Beni Elohim.
Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Samael. Now also them, all their names end with El. Because they belong to the Yahweh school of thought. The Yahweh school of thought is El Shaddai. Spiritual tradition. Because in singular is El. So El. Because they belong to the Yahweh school of thought. The Yahweh school of thought is El Shaddai. Spiritual tradition. Because in singular is El. So this El, because they belong to the Yahweh school of thought. The Yahweh school of thought is El Shaddai, El Sibo, El Nis, El Wadwan. And the angels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and then their prophets also end with El.
Yes.
Daniel, Ezekiel. So this is the Elohim school. Now the Yahweh school will end with Yah. And then they say God is Yah. And it was introduced when they... spiritual, because in singular is El. So this Elohim school of thought, which is basically made up of 12 gods, has 7 messengers, is 2, which are called the angels.
The Beni Elohim.
Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Samael. Now also them, all their names end with El, because they belong to the Yahweh school of thought. The Yahweh school of thought is El Shaddai, El Sibo, El Nis, El Wadwan. And the angels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and then and then their prophets also end with El. Daniel, Ezekiel. So this is the Elohim
Elohim
school.
school of
Now the Yahweh school will end with Yah. And then they say God is Yah.
Yeah,
And that is why it's introduced when they introduce Yahweh or Jehovah or Jah. So will be Yahshua, Isaiah, Micah. This is Ayah in the end. It's another school of thought.
Jeremiah.
And then you have the Deuterocanonical school of thought. Is these ones who always say, the law of Moses said. Moses said if we find someone, they quote Moses all the time, the law of Moses. And that is why some theologian will tell you that of all the books of the Old Testament, the only book, or the oldest book of the Old Testament, is not Genesis, it's the book of Job. Because the book of Job is the only one who doesn't quote Moses, who doesn't make Moses as a frame of reference or a reference point, because he existed before Moses. But all these ones who existed after Moses, they make Moses as their reference. So that is the Deuterocanonical, which is basically in Swahili they say kumbu la Torati, the remembrance of the Torah, the remembrance of the law. Then you have the other one, the priestly school, the Melchizedek, the Aaron, the Zedek, the priest of David, Solomon, father of John the Baptist. So these are the four schools compacted together, and they are responsible for the contradiction. Even the New Testament begin with the four schools that are contradicting themselves. They call themselves the Synoptic Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It's four schools of
the
thought.
four perspectives of Christ.
Exactly. Why the four schools? Because these people are obsessed with the four cardinal points: north, south, east, and west. The cross. Understand? So if you go to the extra biblical books like that goes into Melchizedek, they'll tell that Melchizedek, or the Trinitarian, who are trying to prove that there was Christianity even in the Old Testament, they'll tell that Melchizedek took the bones of Adam.
The book of the bee and the cave of treasures.
Yes, the Metzafe Kufale and so forth. That Melchizedek went in the cave of treasures, took the bones of Adam, took it into the ark. Because Adam, after he died, Adam was chased from Eden. They live in the cave of treasures. He died. They put his bones there. They minister on over his bones, generation after generation. That is the antediluvial patriarch, or the 12 patriarchs who existed before the flood. Lamech, Seth, Methuselah, Enoch, Noah. So that in the time of Noah, when he was told that the flood is coming, he went to the cave of treasures, took the bones, put them into the ark. Now, after the waters, after the flood, it was Shem and Melchizedek who took the bones of Adam and went to a place called Golgotha, which is why the reason they call it the skull. Because the skull of all mankind, which is Adam, was buried there. So they said, when he reached there, he struck the earth.
And
He split in the form of a cross. Then he deposited the bone. That is why also the cross of Christ was planted there. He was crucified there. His blood went down to redeem Adam or baptize Adam. But this is now Christology. Yes.
Christian mythology.
Christian mythology. Because at the end of the day, it's still a myth.
It's not real.
It's not, no.
In fact, I was in Israel a few years ago, and I visited the place called Golgotha. And when I asked the historians there, the best answer they could give me was, it's the Roman Catholics, it's the Roman Catholic Church who said this mountain, this happened, but the Romans were never in Israel. So if it's not here, it's somewhere. Now, if it's not here, it's somewhere. There is a problem there. It does not exist.
You see, even a professor of Tel Aviv University in Israel, they tell you that these things, they were mythologies, they never existed.
They never existed.
Because here we're speaking to the fact that Rasta used the Bible, which is a colonial book. So it comes with colonial ideas of what God is.
Or what should be.
What God should be. So therefore, it doesn't then ground itself on the African idea of what God is. Because in Africa, we talk of God, although we don't say God, we don't necessarily say it's omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, like this contradiction that they have, because they tell you that God is omnipotent, it's omnipresent. But omnipresent means he's ever present, he's everywhere. But he's still the same one who come and look for Adam and ask him, Adam, where are you? while Adam is hiding from him, and they start to play hide and seek in the garden. You understand? Here we're speaking to the fact that Rasta used the Bible, which is a colonial book. So it comes with colonial ideas of what God is,
Or what should be.
what God should be. So therefore, it doesn't then ground itself on the African idea of what God is. Because in Africa, we talk of God, although we don't say God, we don't necessarily say he's omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, like this contradiction that they have, because they tell you that God is omnipotent, he's omnipresent. But omnipresent means he's ever present, he's everywhere. But he's still the same one who come and look for Adam and ask him, Adam, where are you? Well, Adam is hiding from him. And they start to play hide and seek in the garden.
Now is ugogo wakho yes ushonile ubuyile ufuna i-black label ufuna i-cigarette. How is a deceased spirit going to experience a physical libation?
Well, you see, again, this person never left, because death is not exiting this plane.
Okay.
Death is like, I'll use the example Mutabaruka used. Ne? That it's like you get into an open space. You put a building in an open space. Ne? Now the space inside the building and the space outside the building is the same. The space inside of you and the space outside of you is the same. So what happened is death is the falling of the building. When the walls of the building fall, the building don't go with that space. The buildings, the building goes alone. The space still remains. So when a person die, because this most spiritual cultures, including Haile Selassie, they say they agree to the idea that the body is a temple. That this is a container that carry you, your life, which is the essence of your existence. Because the essence of your existence is your life, but it is contained by this container. Now, when this container goes, it doesn't go with the life. It goes alone. That is why when you dream of Umkhulu Wako, you don't dream her spirit. You see her as she is.
Okay.
Like she doesn't come as a ghost. That is why we say, I dream the spirit of my ancestors. It takes us back to that thing we're saying, there is no such thing as ancestor worship. Or that Africans worship the spirit of their dead ancestor.
Thank you.
Because who comes to you is that same person with the wrinkles and the mark and the scars that you knew that person with.
And the mannerisms.
Now, why will this person therefore want their black label and what? This explains to the idea of existence, that in the person of the person, there are many persons. When we greet you in plural. Dumelang. Sanibonani. Tobela. But because we are
Now is ugogo wakho yes ushonile ubuyile ufuna.
Now, one of that is that the brain has got two spheres, the left side and the right side. One is feminine, one is masculine. One is dealing with intuition, one is dealing with something completely different from that. So there is that coexistence. Just like the concept now, when we come into this thing, they like to say African culture is patriarchal. African culture is not patriarchal.
It's never been patriarchal.
It's never been. The man is the head of the homestead. The woman is the head of the family.
Okay.
Umuzi wami ekhaya lakhe.
Okay.
Babo? So our roles has always been complementary. So we talk of existence that was based on cooperative affair, not competitive affair, not a competition between the male and the female, which then creates the gender-based violence and so forth.
And all of this nonsense that we go through now. Because now there's a misunderstanding, because now these two things are competing with each other. Because in the West, masculinity is supreme. It's a patriarchal system. Whereas here, it's a balance. It has nothing to do with humanity.
Now, one of that is that the brain has got two spheres, the left side and the right side. One is feminine, one is masculine. One is dealing with intuition, one is dealing with something completely different from that. African culture is not patriarchal.
It's never been patriarchal.
It's never been. The man is the head of the homestead.
The problem is that now we're searching for what is inside of us, outside of us. So, with all sincerity, we think that we are searching for God. Right? But now, even all the things which are outside, inside of us, things which trouble us, things which make us happy, things which fill us with fulfillment, we will externalize them as well. Right? You have a conversation with people, and once you start to challenge their understanding of the world in a way to help them raise their vibration, to help them raise themselves, they will digress, they will evade, and dismiss. They will move away from the topic because it starts to become uncomfortable. The problem is that now we're searching for what is inside of us, outside of us. So, with all sincerity, we think that we are searching for God. Right? But now, even all the things which are outside, inside of us, things which trouble us, things which make us happy, things which fill us with fulfillment, we will externalize them as well. Right? You have a conversation with people, and once you start to challenge their understanding of the world in a way to help them raise their vibration, to help them raise themselves, they will digress, they will evade, and dismiss. They will move away from the topic because it starts to become uncomfortable.
In Ethiopia, you will hear Ethiopia was never colonized, the only country that was never colonized. And a lot of Rastafarian brethren will tell you this. Ethiopia was never colonized.
Ethiopia is the first country in Africa to be colonized by religion. No, but you see, the truth must not massage. We must not massage the truth. We must not. This is unpopular opinion. This is German. This is not your contemporary opinion. Is that when it is written in the Kebra Negast, when the Queen of Sheba visited Solomon, she said in the conversation with Solomon, she said, "I worship the sun. Some people in my country worship the moon and others worship the stars." She's basically talking about religious tolerance that existed there. 6 months after sitting with Solomon, she came back with the God of Solomon. She declared that from now on, all of you, we no more worship God we used to worship. She's basically destroying religious freedom. She introduced monotheism. We will now worship the God of Israel, not the God of Ethiopia. Now tell me if that is not religious colonialism. You know, that you introduce that from now on, we are going to worship the God of my boyfriend. Understand? Which most of the Ethiopians themselves never saw King Solomon. That is why among the Oromos, they will tell you that the Solomonic dynasty, or the myth of Solomon and Sheba, it is a myth based on fornication and theft.
In Ethiopia, you will hear Ethiopia was never colonized, the only country that was never colonized.
Your race is your religion. That a Chinese man speaks Chinese, dresses Chinese, praises Chinese gods. A Muslim man speaks Arabic, dresses Arabic, and prays to the Arabic God. But you, as the black man, as the African, as the Bantu, whatever category of Bantu you are, when you are now a Buddhist, you will live Chinese, you will dress Chinese, you will eat Chinese, and pray to the Chinese gods. If you are Muslim, you will have a Muslim name, you will have an Arabic name, you will eat Arabic food, you will dress like Arabics, and you will praise to the Arabic God. So, ukuhlukana kwethu naloko esiyiko has made us susceptible. Isenze manje sikwazi ukufaka manje lezinto lezi esingazi understand. Mase ifika phakathi kwethu lento, it doesn't make sense. That is why mawuso uphuma ke sohlukana lo uNkulunkulu omshendlini. Uhamba uyomfuna le ngaphandle futhi uNkulunkulu abanye abantu bayokhisaba. Your race is your religion.
I think that the missionaries, the Christian missionaries made also, is this thing that when we talk like this, they will be saying we are worshipping the dead. Now, there is no African word for ancestor worship. Now, we're saying if you can't name it, you can't claim it. So if you don't have a word for it, what is it doesn't exist. What is polytheism? We don't have polytheism or lerapela badimo ba bantši. We don't have that. We don't have animism. We don't have pantheism. We don't have deities and divinities and demons, or monotheism for that particular matter. So therefore, what we are dealing with now, we are dealing with a situation where we are caught up in a situation where we are using European concepts to define African phenomena. We are saying Mudimu is God, as if Mudimu has an English name, like most Africans who were colonized under apartheid, that you have to be Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. Your name is Rolihlahla, but you must have an English name, which is basically a Christian name, which is basically a colonial name. Because colonialism, when it was brought to us, it came with triple C. That they're coming to colonize, Christianize, and commercialize. Remember those who claim to have discovered us, the Jan van Riebeeck, when he came here with the dromedaries, the Goede Hoop and the Reiger. It was a company. It was a Dutch East India company. So they were on a commercial mission here. So they discovered us by fault because they were looking for a refreshment station on their way to India. So we become a project of colonization, Christianization, and commercialization because we were sold as slaves, as human cargoes. So at one time we were commodities to be sold. We were converted. Now you see the process of conversion in our African mysticism or in our witchcraft or kabulo ibaronano. It is what we will call the zombification. So they replace your soul with the soul of the other. So they've replaced your African soul with a foreign soul in the name of Judeo-Christianity. Now we are zombies. So we are zombies and demons of colonialism. So we are zombies of other religions. So we are not true to our culture. We are not true to our nature because our culture, it is a reflection of our nature. Ka Sepedi re re ke tlhago ya rage. Tlhago ke nature. Imbo yake. Wa bona ke re, that is his nature. Now you have changed his nature for the nature of the other. So therefore you have effectively made that person a zombie. So what makes the church yard? The church yard is a zombie yard. It's where people are being zombified. So the whole process of Sunday and churches and congregation is zombification of the Africans. I think that the missionaries, the Christian missionaries made.
And I want us to have a clear background on this. When we're going to talk about kings and all of that, this tradition here, lobola and the price of the bride and
That's never there before.
it started with Usomtsweu, Shepstein, Theophilus Shepstein. And this thing you would Omalume, they now have to take care of the marital negotiations for the son because during that time there was industry, there was the mines, there was the farms, and Obaba, Bebesema Maini, Besema Plazin Besebet. The whole year they were working. So should it happen Uguti, boy and girl meet during the year and Umelego Kulunya, the only people who are available are the mother's side of the family. And I want us to have a clear background. Tradition can be anything that is done repeatedly by a certain group of people because they choose to do it.
Okay, all right.
It has nothing to do with isiko labo, but it can have everything to do with their culture. Their cult ritual is called hip hop.
Yes.
Their tradition will be hip hop.
Hip hop tradition.
What they do, how they speak, how they dress, yonkid, is hip hop.
It has a beginning, it has a time frame, even a beginning or an ending.
But now,
Rules.
your father is not a hip hop head. Your mother is not a hip hop head. Your grandparents were never hip hop heads. You cannot say, Siko lagi. It's your culture, yes, but this is why it's difficult to explain certain things in English when they are purely African. Tradition. Harry bulela rere ke mosadi waka. Yena are ke munna wa hai. Let's look at the words. Munna does not mean man. Munna means he is me. Munna. Ke munna. Now, Mosadi does not mean wife. It means wherever I go, ke yena a salang le motse wa ntate.
Ke mosala hae,
Ke mosala hae. She's the caretaker of this. Actually, every single thing in a Bantu homestead is owned by the woman. Olocholwe ngeinkomo. Ukuthi siye sayocela ukuthi please come and take care of us. We cannot look after ourselves. If we could look at marriage that way, abuse, all this GBV nonsense would go out of the wind. Because now there is this concept, Kashepstone, Yelobona, of buying the woman.
They call it the bride's price.
The bride's price, the dowry. That is, Ilobona today actually is done wrong. This is why we have unstable marriages, breakups, and all of that. All that comes from the concept of Ushepstein, Usomsweu.
Another thing that most Bazalwana that I know, born again Christians, hate everything about Africa except Lobona.
Except Lobona, because they benefit money from it. They will not slaughter a goat, but they will sit around the table and discuss how much money do we get. So it's this confusion.
Lobona has got another level, man. People, they just send you e-wallet. Not e-wallet.
Money transfer.
Money transfer.
So, man,